Too many of us are literally just struggling, and we are struggling from shame, the pressure, the weight of walking with God, the temptation that comes with it, the testing that it comes with. The Lord reminded me today about how Adam and Eve, when they were in the Garden of Eden, and when they do, especially Eve, God called out to them and he asked them, hey, where are you? He already knew the answer to it, but he like, okay, where y'all at? Because y'all already know what y'all did, right? That moment, they already knew that they had failed God. Something that came to me was it immediately caused a separation between them and their father to make them hide away from God. When that separation comes, that disconnects us from the communion that we must have with our Father, how important the communion of being in communion with God is key. Then my mind went to Job, how Job was an upright man and he was in communion with the Father. And then when he began to experience the tests, the trials, he began to think in his mind, wait a minute. He had a struggle. Job had a little struggle. The minute Job thought that God lost the will, that God had forgotten about him because he was doing all this other stuff, and that God was not in concern for what he had going on, where he thought that God had literally neglected him, and literally he was dealing with an unjust of these trials and tribulations, when God was so completely aware of the attacks of the enemy. I'll begin to question God. Lord, why are you giving me life only to cause me to suffer? When God responds, his response was indirect, but indirect in the fact that it shows how God's attention is actually on every single detail of this universe. He began to ask Job questions like, have you provided food for lions? 'Cause have you, sir? You doing all this murmuring, complaining. Then he goes on to say, or even seen isolated mountain goat give birth. My point, when we experience so many of these emotions of maybe feeling shameful for what we've done, or pressure or weight from walking with God and just inadequate, when we begin to feel these moments, or we're being attacked like Job, understand that the most important thing is communion with our Father. It is not just like Adam and Eve. Satan brought a full disconnect. Without these challenges, we are not transitioning spiritually to the place where God needs us to be. These types of challenges in our life, it literally transitions us to where God needs to shift us spiritually in Him. God uses these sufferings to develop our spirits. That's why you meet people and they're terrible people, because they are not accepting of the growth that God is giving them. But not only that, we will begin to ignore the parts of us that needs to be addressed until we are faced with them. Going back to the story of Job, when Job questioned God, what I learned from that is God is literally intimately familiar with every molecule of creature, of human being, whatever, on this earth, in this world, and he knows more about them than we can ever comprehend. So whatever reason that he had for Job to having to allow the suffering that he suffered, that was God's call, and he knows what's best, and he understands what he is doing inside of you. And if I had to guess, there was a little pride there with Job, because of the way that he critiqued God's knowledge and his ability, and God had to correct him. Do you know how the mountains move? No, sir, you don't. And then the funnier part about it is Job never finds out why God allowed the suffering. Such a mystery. Hope and pray that you understand that God knows each of us intimately. He is very familiar with every single thing, detail about who we are, how he built us, and whatever he calls for us to endure, for us to go through. He allows it for purpose, for plans. And He is our creator, and we are the clay. So as the clay, we must understand that He is God and He knows what's best.